I want to talk about the NFL and Donald Trump, because these days, those two words seem to go hand in hand. Turns out that the DEI politics, the woke politics, to use the overused moniker, the people who always seem to be offended about everything, who got rid of the term Washington Redskins from the NFL football team and replaced it with the Washington Commanders, have been under intense pressure from the Trump administration to reverse this stupid name change that they did. And he's using the fact that they desperately want a new stadium, and Donald Trump has the ability to make it difficult, maybe impossible, to get their new dream stadium. Holding it over their heads, if I understand the story correctly. So let's find out what's happening. Why the Washington Commanders, writes Charles Gasparino, owners are thinking hard about Trump's demand that they restore the Redskins moniker. Now that is an AI-generated image. Wow. Donald Trump wearing the Redskins. Okay, so the owners of the NFL's Washington Commanders, Redskins, fear that they have to snub the woke mob and restore the original Redskins name or risk President Trump throttling their deal for a new stadium. Yep, it is about the stadium. On the money has learned. You know, it is amazing to see what leadership in Washington actually looks like. The mob, the crazies, the censorship Nazis, the communazis, who have desperately been trying to control speech, trying to convince you that transgender people, women with penises, were women. Trying to tell you that morbidly obese people were sexy. Trying to tell you that your skin color might dictate whether you're good or bad. People, fans of the sport, especially Redskins fans, were not anti their team name, but the pressure never stopped. The activists were loud. They were all over social media. Bots were being used. And so the NFL capitulated. And eventually, after years of resisting, they changed the name. And they ceased to be the team that everyone remembered. And they became the Commanders. Well, it looks like that might change. Insiders close to private equity titans John Harris and David Blitzer, who in addition to the Commanders own the NBA's Philadelphia 76ers and the NHL's New Jersey Devils through their company, a holding company, said that the buyouts billionaires are facing heat to bring back the Redskins name. And it is famed, and its famed feathered logo, after the commander-in-chief has repeatedly ripped the new nomenclature, recently referring to the franchise as the Washington Whatevers, which, let's be honest, if you follow the sport, which I used to, and I stopped after the kneeling, after the politicization of the sports a number of years back during the height of the BLM hate group riots. But when I see the Washington Commanders, it doesn't connect with me. There's no visceral connection to the team, whereas the Redskin helmet always immediately brought in memories of the team, the rivalries, etc. But the Commanders just, to me, always seemed like a dud. But I stopped watching football, so I'm not really the best person to judge here. But whatever. Now, Trump had said, putting pressure on the Commanders, I may put a restriction on the Commanders if they don't change the name back to the original Washington Redskins and get rid of that ridiculous moniker, the Washington Commanders. I will not make a deal for them to build a stadium in Washington. And so, since then, Harris and Blitzer have been privately warning business associates that the White House does indeed have some leverage over their plans to build their new $3.7 billion stadium. And they're getting nervous now about Trump's attacks. He is like an attack pit bull. He doesn't let up. And if they want this new stadium, odds are, my guess, they're going to have to capitulate. Now, publicly, of course, these two idiots, Harris and Blitzer, have said that the Commanders will remain the Commanders. Much of the stadium deal involves working with the decidedly woke D.C. government run by left-wing Mayor Muriel Bowser. The deal has no direct federal funding, with D.C. agreeing to cover about $1 billion of the cost. But behind the scenes, they say that they are parsing all the ways Trump could screw things up for them. The stadium is on federal land, leased to the D.C. government for the next 99 years. Oh, no. Yeah, that could definitely cause them a problem. This means that it will need certain approvals from U.S. agencies like the National Capital Planning Commission and the U.S. Commission of Fine Arts. The boards of both are occupied by some Trump appointees. It also needs a nod or two from the Trump administration's environmental team, meaning he could delay it for at least another 3.5 years. And if you got in another Republican who had any kind of balls to say, no, we're not going to go with the woke name of the Commanders, we want our original name back, or else go F yourself, they could be in a world of hurt. And so the fear is that Trump could, as he's done with left-leaning law firms, colleges, and major media outfits, use his control of the administrative state to extract concessions. Imagine that. Finally using the power of the presidency for a positive outcome. That's what we've been getting lately. In his first term, Trump was really inept when it came to these agencies. But you can tell this time around, they had planned this out. Some people argue that in Trump's first term back in 2016, that maybe he didn't really think he was going to win. I don't know if I believe that, but that's the common discussions around the campfire that a lot of these experts, these so-called experts, have. And so maybe he just wasn't prepared. It's more than likely that he thought he might win, in my opinion, but had no experience and so deferred to the Republican Party, the leadership of the GOP, to set him up with good people. But of course, they set him up with a bunch of rhinos and backstabbing people within his administration, which caused a lot of the chaos and helped feed into the Russia hoax and everything else that happened within the his first term. So this time around, they planned it out. I bet you about 1.5 years out, they were planning exactly how they would do this, who they would put in there. I bet it was all on the table. Now, I don't know anyone within the administration, so I'm just talking out of my ass here, but intelligence guided by common sense. And this is one of those 80-20 issues. Most average people thought it was retarded, who paid attention to the NFL, that the Washington Redskins name was abandoned in the first place. Nobody was really offended except for a bunch of pinheads online. But here we are. And so, the article goes on to write, would Trump ever use his sway over such entities to meddle in private business deal? Well, yeah. Now we know the answer to that, since fighting wokeness appeals to the MAGA base, and quite frankly to most Americans. Ding, ding, ding. And then they note that Trump is a master troller. He can generate unfavorable news cycles. He's a genius at that. He keeps himself in the news 24/7, 365 days a year. This is another one of the reasons, for example, why the Epstein story never went anywhere. Aside from the fact that people have been crying wolf about Trump for the last decade, and he's had multiple fake news allegations against him. And so the Epstein thing, whether true or not, unless there is definitive proof, his base is not going to abandon him over more innuendo. It's just the reality. So I think Donald Trump is going to continue just to keep slamming them, trolling them. And in the end, I'd give it a good 60-40 chance that they do change the name back and the Redskins returned to being called the Redskins in the near future.